Continuing with our celebration of the 125th season of Leominster High School football and the 125 years of the Thanksgiving Day Classic, we welcome you to this special here on Leominster TV. I am Todd Robbins, happy to have you along with us as we continue to kind of chronicle and put together all of the different pieces that component-wise make up this fantastic 125-year tradition across the Twin Cities. Tonight, we welcome in what I'm calling Gates and Gates, or Gates on Gates, as it may be in this particular fashion. Happy to have Leominster High School head coach Devon Gates with me for another edition of this one, and his dad, Bill Gates from Fitchburg, and sporting the blue tonight, which I certainly appreciate.
Yeah, I do too.
You know, I'm not sure that anybody will ever let you back in Fitchburg with it, but that's all right.
No, I think there'll be a checkpoint on my way back home tonight. So thankfully, this isn't going live. So.
That's absolutely right.
But yeah, no, this was for my son, and I'm here to back him.
Absolutely, and I look forward, obviously, to exploring this, kind of development and relationship this evening. And I want to kind of start from the beginning in the sense that, obviously, this is a family tradition that has grown over a sheer number of years. And Bill, it begins with you. So talk to me a little bit about how you got involved with Fitchburg athletics, and then obviously your growth through as a player and your time in school in Fitchburg.
Well, our family was Fitchburg family, and everyone went to Fitchburg High School. My Uncle Bob and my Uncle John, who played for Fitchburg High School. My Uncle Sam played for Fitchburg High School. He was a lineman. So the natural flow of things was there wasn't anyone from the 1940s until the 1960s from the Gates family that played football. So I was the guy that played football, and we had a very good team. I wouldn't say we were an outstanding team, but I was the co-captain of the football team my senior year. So that started the red and gray tradition. And then, kind of after that, it kind of faded a little bit. And then, obviously, you get married and you have a son. And the first thought is, well, yeah, geez, I'd like him to be an athlete. But I never felt like I wanted to pressure any of my kids to be an athlete. It's important that they want to be something. And Devon showed up one day at the house and he said, I think I'd like to play football. So I said, well, it's kind of tough. And he said, well, Uncle Kevin said I could play. My cousin Kevin Roy was coaching Pop Warner.
Okay.
So I said, all right, Devon, we'll go over and we'll watch. So we went over and watched and the tackling and everything, and I said, are you sure you want to play? And he said, yeah, I want to play. I said, all right. So Kevin said, well, the only stipulation, because he was signing up late, the only stipulation was you have to coach. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And there I was for 10 years coaching Pop Warner.
So it began there. I know anytime I interview folks from Fitchburg, the number one thing that we kind of start with talking about is what part of Fitchburg that you grew up in. It plays so much a part in kind of your story. So talk to me a little bit about the part of Fitchburg you grew up in.
I grew up on the south side, a little dead-end street called Winch Street, and it was a great place to grow up. Those were the days when you could go out at night, and we were outdoors all the time. We were never inside the house. There weren't the video games or any of those things, so I'm really dating myself. But we always played sports in the street. We played wiffle ball, we played kickball. The fathers and the sons would get together on a Friday night or a Saturday, play kickball, and the loser's dad had to pile everybody into their car and take them down to A&W Root Beer to treat them with root beer. So that kind of started that sports tradition. And then it was just a great place to grow up. I went to Hosmer School, and then to Fitchburg, to B.F. Brown.
Okay.
Went to B.F. Brown. They didn't have football. Actually, they did 7th and 8th grade football. I played there, and then my freshman year, they did half sessions. We had to go to school in the afternoon. So a lot of times we would practice with the varsity, and the only thing I remember about my freshman year was Warren Muir was playing.
Okay.
And Warren Muir went out on a sweep, and I was playing out on the corner, and I thought, this is my time to shine. And I went to tackle Warren Muir, and he stuck out his arm, and I felt like I was hit by a freight truck. And I just flattened. So, yeah, that was not a really good start, but And the rest is, I was a decent football player. I wasn't saying I was an outstanding player, but I was in the trenches type of player. I was a running back, and I was a monster man on defense. And my job was go to the ball.
You mentioned Warren Muir. We had him on the program last year. Got to talk to Dennis Dalton as well, and they certainly harkened back to their time and remembered a number of folks that were involved, at that moment in time. But it was very interesting to hear just how nice a man Warren Muir is, because when you look at all of the history on him, he's a fantastic man, but an incredibly aggressive football player.
Yeah. Now, when he got out on the football field, he was a different person. No question. It was interesting because I hung around with Jeff Jerzyk, whose older brother was Jack Jerzyk, part of that undefeated football team. And we used to play football in the snow with those guys. So I played against Dennis Dalton, Warren Muir, Jack Jerzyk, and, you just got the crap beat out of you. So, yeah, it was a great time to grow up. And it was great. Warren Muir was such a nice guy. Jack Jerzyk was a great guy. He helped me coach Pop Warner for a couple of years. Jeff Jerzyk was my assistant coach. He was a great guy. So, yeah, all those years were important. They were great years, coaching his son in Pop Warner. And then Devon got too big and couldn't play Pop Warner anymore, so then moved up to the high school. And at that point, Ray Cosenza was just coming in. I think it was his second or third year.
I think my first year might have been his third year. Fourth year.
So when he came in, Mike Pellin came to me and my cousin Kevin and asked us if we would start the football boosters and if we would take Pop Warner, run the offense that Fitchburg runs, so that the kids, by the time they got to the high school, had the program and they could get right into it. So that's what we did. We started the Football Booster Club and I supported Fitchburg High School for 35 years. I did their program book. I did all their games. I did freshman, JV, varsity, took the camera on the road. So it was great. I loved every minute of it. And the reason I ran the camera was I couldn't stand sitting still in the stands, and especially when Devon was playing. So it was great for me to be behind that camera. I could zoom in, I could watch everything up close, and I didn't have to listen to anybody. So it was great.
And that, of course, starts to set the table for a couple of pieces, which, of course, I now understand how Ray Cosenza got things started that so quickly. Once he was in about his third or fourth year, you guys come along, you get the youth programs running the same plays that the high school are, and all of a sudden they understand how things are going to go. How much did that ease the transition with you guys going from youth on up when you kind of had that understanding already?
It wasn't really much of a transition. It was more just getting used to the new coaches, but the plays and the schemes were the same. So it was, there was obviously that familiarity. We had some confidence running the stuff. It was just kind of figuring out where you fit in with the coaches, with the team. But I think it obviously paid dividends with the success that we had.
But the thing about Pop Warner, and I don't care what city or town you're in, the thing with Pop Warner is it's fundamentals. If you can get that base for those kids by the time they get to the high school, you can take the kids to another level like coaches do.
And that
is taking them to another level.
Certainly, building one piece onto another. And Coach, obviously, as you grew up with your father as coach, that's not always an easy relationship. That means the game at some point gets back in the car and potentially can go right on home with you. Talk to me about how that ended up working out.
Well, no, and I probably gave him a lot of headaches in terms of the way that and it's hard for me to say this, but I'm just, as a coach now, I'm more aware of how I was as a football player, and and I probably was a little bit selfish back then, and probably spoke up when I probably shouldn't have spoken up, and he would let me know and put me right back in line when I didn't, and would sit me down and even pull me from the game if I did. I remember one incident where I was I talked down to a teammate where I yelled at him, and it really, it changed me and my outlook on being a teammate forever. But I remember him doing that on the sideline of an away game. I think it was at Air Shirley, and he took me out of the game, and I'll never forget it. So, I thank him and the other coaches that we had for Pop Warner for, it wasn't just myself that was taught that lesson. They were consistent with all the kids. So it was about being, playing for each other, the stuff that we're doing right now, playing for each other, and, just being a good person and doing things the right way. And I think we had a bunch of kids who bought into that, and it served us well through Pop Warner and then going up to the high school and, wherever we went from there.
Great that, of course, we have your dad, Bill, here tonight to be able to hear some of those stories. I'm sure that's not the first time you've heard them. As you were coming up and you were hearing about some of these larger-than-life characters, and you got to meet some of them along the way as well, it kind of is one of those cases where history and knowledge does help to spark a real interest in being a part of the overall tradition.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, playing, on the side of Crocker Field, saying, I'm Zach McCall, or I'm this person, this person. We used to do this stuff all the time, play touch football, and those are some of my best memories of being at Crocker Field was, before I was even a player and playing with my friends out on the side and just being in the atmosphere. But yeah, and to have, to be a part of it with my father, and it was really a special time.
You guys were just talking about it as we were kind of setting things up before we came out here, that you're almost exactly 30 years apart with your connection, between the two. There was some dramatic changes in both the sport, in society, and how high school athletics fit in. From both perspectives, how did you see things change? Obviously, from your time period coming forward, Bill, and then obviously vice versa, Coach, as you kind of looked back at the things you knew and learned and saw where the sport had developed. How did the two of you kind of relate to one another 30 years later?
Well, I never had the advantage of playing Pop Warner. I think that Pop Warner had just started, and I was too old to play. So when I started coaching Pop Warner, you were getting all kinds of different kids from all different, some kids without families and without dads, and it got. Some of the kids coming with emotional problems. You have kids that come that might be ADD and they forgot to take their medicine. So trying to teach them something is just like, okay, well, we'll try that again tomorrow. So, so with having that idea of football, the best thing to focus on as a kid as an individual, and I think I always told the kids when I was coaching Pop Warner, is you as an individual first. You have to like yourself, you have to like what you're doing, you have to believe in what you're doing, and then it's your family, and then it's schoolwork, and then it's football. It's got to be in that fashion, because if you can't give the first two, you're really not going to be very good to your teammates. So that one aspect of football will always carry through, but the game is so much. I mean, I'm way out of touch with the game.
I'm not going to comment. You're getting there. You're taking the initiative to learn, and that I appreciate.
Well,
I can almost have a conversation with you about it.
Talk. Yeah, it's tough because I'm learning, and it's a learning process, and I see what he's doing with high school kids. And I mean, I'll get into the reason why I decided to wear blue.
Certainly.
And of course, I want to support my son. I love him dearly, and I will always be there for him. But the thing that I said I'll sit on the sideline. Our family goes. We'll sit on the sideline and watch the football game and support Devon.
Hold back my wife.
Yeah. and I wasn't wearing blue. I didn't wear red and gray. But I go to the football games, and the third game, I think it was after the Schober game, I watched the Doherty game, the Schober game, and I thought, wow, this is a good football team. And they made adjustments when injuries happened. Quarterback went down with no Schober. Running back went down. They made changes. They kept the guys in the game. The kids stayed in the game. They stayed focused. And I thought, oh, these are good football players. I don't care where you're from. If you're out there and you're working hard and you're playing hard, that's something worth getting involved with. So I wasn't able to see the Wachusett game, but I watched tapes. And then the game against, I went down to the Shepherd Hill game, sat up in the stands, and I couldn't sit there. I couldn't sit there. So I went down to the sidelines, and I couldn't help it. I guess the old coaching came back, and I talked to the kids, and I realized, man, there's some really nice kids here, And then we got back in the game against Shrewsbury. that's when I really, the practice that week before, I started seeing these kids work together. And these kids, I mean, a lot of these kids have really good manners. You know, they call you sir, and you don't see that all the time. And so more so than even being supportive there of Devon, I really kind of got to really like these kids.
And they are
And I want to support them because even when they were in the toughest times in a game and they lost games 8-6, they came right back the next week. They listened to what coach was saying. They got themselves ready for the next game. And I don't think anybody can say, other than 2 games where things happened that couldn't quite work out against Wachusett and Shepherd Hill, but you know, St. John's, Shrewsbury, I think they were happy to get on the bus and get back to Shrewsbury because they got away with a game there. And you know, I'm not going to talk about all that kind of stuff, but this is a great football team.
I can hear the passion, which I adore. I absolutely adore.
It's all. I mean, the rivalry's great. All of this stuff that goes on the outside, you know, mixing the pot and everybody getting mad, and it's like, you know. These are good kids, both sides of the ball. They're out there to play football. It's one of the best games they'll ever play. Most of these kids, probably the greatest game they'll ever play football in. And you just want it to be good sportsmen, good football players, guys that are going out there and hitting hard and doing what they're supposed to. And because I've been following these limits to kids, I won't give up on them. I won't give up on
I believe that fully, Coach. When I hear your father talks so much about some of these things, some of the word choice that he has, I don't think it's accidental that a lot of that sounds very familiar in 2019 in your program as well.
Of course, of course. We were talking about differences between, you know, 67 and 97, and the thing that didn't change is culture. It's what builds it. To me, it's what's important about the sport. And I know we've talked about it, and it's, you know, it's really what we're trying to establish, what we're trying to do, and you know, I think we've come a long way since we started in August. But to have my dad there, who knows the kind of coach that I've been, you know, what's important to me, it was because it was what's important to him, and now it's important to me, to have him there on the sidelines and in practice, you know, and helping these kids the way I saw him help, you know, other players in Pop Warner and with myself. It's been really special for me to have him there and do that. So, you know, to me, it's all about the culture and giving kids a good experience and helping them be the person, reach the potential, be the person that they want to be. You know, it's about rising above, you know, some of the other stuff they have to deal with, you know, other kids who may be bringing them down and stuff like that. And so it's about playing together. It's about playing for each other. And I think we have a group right now that's really seeing that and doing that the best they have all season long right now.
I know your favorite Thanksgiving memories will hopefully be coming very, very soon on this side, but each of you have your own memories from the games and playing and watching. So I want to hear a couple of Thanksgiving memories. Bill, we'll talk and start with you. First, give me something from your playing days, something you remember from the rivalry, and then maybe something from then on.
The biggest game of my career at Fitchburg High School came my junior year, and Chris Petrodis was quarterback. Steve Bedard, Kenny Bedard, all of these kids, Jeff Jerzyk, Bruce Martinez, who's passed away. But Leominster was predicted to win 36-0. It was at Crocker Field, and we had a banquet the night before. And everybody talked about, you guys can go out there, you can make it happen, you can win. So it was at Crocker Field. Crocker Field was muddy. And it was a hard-hitting, back-and-forth game. And we lost the game, but we only lost 16-14. And it was just a great game. My senior year, I broke my hand against Boston Ridge Latin. So I was out for the Thanksgiving Day game, but I was dying on the sidelines. So,
I believe that.
Junior year was a really good football game.
Coach, how about for you? Well, it's tough. They were all really, really special. I remember my freshman year, I didn't play, but I was on the sidelines watching. It was a 44-40 game, going back and forth between Leominster and Fitchburg with, Todd Stephanie was that quarterback and just throwing up passes to James McCall and Clarence Yarbrough, and then you have Bob Raxasak and Brian Mezzafero on the other side doing the same thing. It was just a track meet back and forth. Game. And Ryan Keenan was running lights out. I mean, it was such a great game to watch and be a part of. But then, I have to say, my senior year, when we had a great team my senior year, got over the hump, went on to win a state championship. But to play in that game, I think Leominster had the best team they had in 5 or 6 years. So it was a really competitive game. And we went out there. I remember it was so cold on the field. It had snowed the day before, and then it iced over, so we couldn't even wear our cleats because it was like walking on cement. So we had to put on our running shoes. Had to play in our running shoes. And we had a pretty good game and came out on top. So I never lost the Thanksgiving game when I was there, and I think that's probably what my teammates in our senior class kind of took with us. But they were all special.
It makes such a difference when you walk away knowing that. And of course, the debate between the track shoes and the spikes every time you go over to Crocker Field to play a football game. That is always the great discussion on Thanksgiving Day, particularly based on the weather forecast.
Yeah, I just remember that game, Devon senior year. Again, I was up on the camera. And just watching him play, throwing the touchdown passes to Robbie Seguin and extra points to Colin Burns, his best friend, and then Devon just plowing up the middle, quarterback sneaks left and right, getting 10 yards out of whack. And nobody knows this, but after that football game, his arms were so swollen from hitting that frozen ground that they were just out like that. We had to take him to the hospital. And to make sure that his arms weren't broken. But that's the kind of player he was. That's the kind of player he was. He gave it all. So.
And that was the culture that was built by the coaching and by my teammates. We had this conversation before too. We didn't want to let the other guys down. So it didn't matter. You were hurt. It didn't matter. You would have to be on crutches or have the doctor tell you that you can't play to not be on that football field. We fought through a lot of injuries. We fought through a lot of aches and pains because we had come up short the last couple of years in the Super Bowl. We had lost, and that senior class that I had was really special to be. I was really thankful to be a part of it because it was a special group of guys.
Explaining that culture, and you guys both talk about it, to the present-day athlete who's trying to understand and maybe didn't grow up in either Leominster or Fitchburg for the entirety of their lifetime. And Fitchburg certainly went through this and has now experienced their renaissance under Coach Tom DiGeronimo, and in the process now Leominster going through that as well, and trying to get this influx of student athletes that are coming in that don't have the lifetime background. How do you make this 125-year, 138 meeting tradition real to today's athlete?
Can I go first?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Culture. You have to make it.
I'm older. Go ahead. I can't remember.
You have to make them want to be a part of it. You have to provide something special that's going to let them. They're going to put down the video games. They're going to put down the social media and want to be a part of something special with their friends that they want to come out and work with each other at. That's not a. It's not rocket science. That's what you need to do. You need to, make it a fun place for guys to be, and to want to work together. I know I sound like a broken record, but it's real. But it's
the message is true.
But that's what it is. Kids, if you're, if coaches are out there, it's not. You can't be the same coach that was out there, 30, 40 years ago. It's just there's too many other things that kids can do without getting yelled at out on a rainy day or out in the heat or out in the cold. Kids, there's too many other things to do that are better than getting yelled at. So, I think you really have to, it takes a special group of kids to want to do that and to bring other kids along and keep on doing that for the classes that keep on coming up to build that success.
There was an interesting story a couple of years back. There were some people that said, kids are coming from all over the place. They're not homegrown kids. They don't understand that history of the rivalry. They don't understand like their grandfather played and their great grandfather played. And I said, no, I don't think so. And I watched, they did some interviews with Fitchburg High kids with FATV. And I mean, these were kids that have maybe just moved to Fitchburg within the last 8 years, and they got it. They understood it. They said, yeah, no, I know that somebody's, the coach's dad played, and we know that what we're doing here today represents so much for the community. And the nice part about meeting and getting involved with the Leominster kids is people have to understand it's no different. These are kids wanting to play a great game. And when you listen to Mark Pedanza, if you read the book, The Rivals, who by the way, he sent it to Coach Belichick.
Yep.
So, and he loved the book. So when you talk to these kids and you see that excitement about the Thanksgiving Day game, I mean, it stirs up a lot of emotions in me, and I'm sure it does Devon, but I don't think these kids are losing that. I really don't. They want to get into that game, and they know it's kind of like the Army-Navy game. They know it's like any Notre Dame and help me out.
Yeah, USC.
Yeah, thank you.
Michigan. And I think with the kids, even though some of our kids may not have the roots of their family that played and grew up in Leominster and played football in Leominster, they still have that shared experience of the 125 teams that have come before them. The guys who have practiced on the same fields, who've played on the same fields, who walked the same halls, who dealt with the same stuff that they had the same teachers, had some of the same issues that the kids have. And it's that kind of shared experience, knowing that the guys before them all went through the same thing, paid their dues, and did what they need to do to get where they wanted to be. And I think that speaks a lot to our guys. Ethnicity doesn't matter. Socioeconomic status doesn't matter. It doesn't. That stuff doesn't matter. It's the shared experience. It's going out there every day with your friends and building something. To feel a part of building something, and the other guys that come before you built it too. It's where it is because of other people. So, so even though they may not have that root system of people who have played before them, and might not be a long line of family players, but it still is special to them, and it's still, it's the enthusiasm for it is not waning. I don't see that with our group.
I know the thing that I always try to capture when we go into that Thanksgiving week, and you can feel when it turns the corner. I don't know if it's the weather. I don't know if it's the calendar. I don't know if we're all sucked into the same psychosomatic thing, but I know that when that calendar turns and you get into that week, you can start to feel the change of the excitement of all the things that build in, whether you're a player, whether you're involved in a support capacity, whether you're a coach, whether you're an administrator. There's something about that game, regardless of where they put it on the calendar and whatever people say about how the schedule has created a situation where the game doesn't matter anymore and so on. There's so many different opinions that are out there on it. I know that trying to capture that feeling and explain it in our broadcast Thanksgiving Eve and Thanksgiving morning is one of the more difficult things to try to get people to understand. Like that buzz, that feeling, that spark, it's in every player, it's in every stadium. The people that come out, yes, smaller crowds than the tens of thousands you see, on video from the years gone by, but you still feel that buzz and that excitement in the stadium that everybody shares, having been brought into this rivalry, whether new or old.
Mm-hmm. But I want to point out, though, that I think it's so important that FATV, LATV are there to cover the games for those thousands of people that can't go to the games, whether they're home making the meals for their families or whether they're just older people that can't get out in that cold weather. It's important.
Without a doubt, because it keeps people involved.
It does.
And that has always been the argument since, of course, the advent of television, was that it does keep people involved in the conversation. Without those pieces, and obviously this is where when I moved over to the radio and stepped in for Dave Clark and Mike Flynn, it became so evident to me that I was speaking to people in both communities and at such a broad, because they've got to get in their car and drive to wherever their meal is being served. This is their one way to stay involved with that game.
Sure.
It's such a huge capacity to it, and you never forget being involved in it. Just the last couple of minutes that we have together, I want to take a moment here and kind of see if we can't get one last thing kind of imparted as we think about where the two of you will be on Thanksgiving morning and Thanksgiving mornings gone by. Is there anything that you'll do this year that maybe is different than you've done in years past together with one another beforehand? Is there a last piece of advice you'll leave Coach with before he heads out to Thanksgiving Day, Bill?
Well, there was one thing I always did when Devon went off to college, to play football.
boy.
and I followed and I went to every single game that Devon played, except for maybe one against Marist. But I always went to Crocker Field. I took some of the grass and I brought it to Devon so he could put it inside his sock to bring him good luck. And I'm so glad that we shared that experience, that was something that was a part of our life and the communication together. When Devon told me, he sent me a little picture of him when he was about 6 years old with his Red Raider cap on and me with his arm around him, and the text underneath said, "Sorry, Dad." And I kind of went, oh, wow. Wow, what am I going to do? This is tough. But the wonderful thing about being a father was I saw that Devon was he's his own man. He's making decisions for his family. That's the right thing to do. And I know he loves me, and I love him, and that's why we're here. And I'll be supporting him, and I'll be down on that sideline with him for the Thanksgiving Day game.
You will need a little bit of that grass at Crocker Field. He may have to go dig it up before it freezes over the next couple of weeks as well. Head coach Devon Gates, Bill Gates, thank you so much for joining us on this special Gates on Gates, or Gates and Gates, here on Leominster TV. Thank you all so very much for joining us. The coverage of the 125th year, the 138th meeting of Leominster and Fitchburg on Leominster TV and the K-Zone, AM 1280 and 105.3 FM, will come your way Thanksgiving Thursday, beginning with a special encore presentation of Recipe for a Classic from 7 to 9 a.m. in place of the morning show that morning, and then beginning with our extended pregame coverage at 9 a.m. and leading you right through kickoff at 10 a.m. and all the way to lunch on Thanksgiving morning on Thursday, November the 28th. For all of us at Leominster TV, Kate Robbins back behind the scenes, I am Todd Robbins. Thank you again for joining us, and so long, everybody.